Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this Planning Committee meeting being held on Wednesday, the 14th of January 2026. This is a multi-locational meeting which is being held in the Council Chamber at Penalta House and via Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being live streamed and a recording will be made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking at Planning Committee will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council's website. Please can I remind all members joining remotely to leave their cameras on during the meeting and to use the hands up function on Teams when you wish to speak. For those members joining in the chamber, please also use the hands up function on Teams and turn on the chamber microphone when you wish to speak. Votes for this meeting will be taken via Microsoft Forms. When a vote is required, the form will appear on your screen and then members will be asked to click on yes, no or abstain and then click on submit vote. Please can I remind members that if you lose contact during the meeting, please make every effort to reconnect. However, the meeting will continue as long as it remains quorate. Now we move to agenda item 1 to receive apologies for absence, and apologies have been received from Councillor Julia Simmons and Councillor Andrew Whitcomb. If members are aware of any other apologies, please add them to chat or notify committee services. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interest in respect of any items of business on this agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations? One received. Councillor Bissett-Foster.
Right, this is my first appearance at the Planning Committee because I've only just been appointed, so I'm not quite sure of the what I'm supposed to do here. So I would like some advice, please, on this. One of the planning application that is on the agenda tonight, I have spoken to the residents surrounding that, and I have offered them some advice prior to being elected to this committee. However, I'm not speaking on behalf of it today formally, but I do want to support the residents. Can you tell me if that's a presidential, if I need to step out when that comes in, or can I still vote?
The legal officer is online. Would the legal officer come in, please?
Hi, Chair. It's Vicky here, Councillor Bissett-Foster. So do you feel that you've got a predetermined view then? So you obviously need to go into the committee with an open mind. So based on what you've said, advising obviously residents, do you feel that you are going in with an open mind, or you do have a predetermined view on the matter?
No, I've got an open mind, but I just wanted to declare that I have been speaking to the residents surrounding this property and advising them what to do before I was appointed to the Planning Committee. But yes, I have an open mind.
So obviously, if you've got a predetermined view, then you can't take part in the vote or debate. But you feel that you've got an open mind and you haven't got a predetermined view, because from what you just said is that you were going to speak in support of the residents.
No, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't speak in support. I'm not going to speak in support of them. Because I've been appointed to the Planning Committee, I wasn't sure where I stood. So this is why I wanted the advice.
Right, okay. So obviously if you feel that you haven't got a predetermined view and you are going into an open mind, then that's fine. And obviously it's a matter for you to decide whether you feel that you've got a personal or prejudicial interest, and you feel that you don't have a personal interest.
No, I don't have a president. No, I'm happy. I am happy to listen and have an open mind, but I just wanted to declare that because I have spoken to the residents around the property.
Obviously, it's a matter for you to decide, but ultimately, if you feel that you don't, then you don't need to declare anything today.
Okay, thank you. That's fine.
That's all cleared up then. That's good. Okay, then now we can move then on to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 10th of December 2025. That's pages 1 and 2 of the pack. I'll just go through them. Page 1, page 2. Are there any matters arising at all? No? Then can somebody move minutes? It's been moved and seconded. Could we have a voting slip on that then, please, Vicky? Sorry?
Councillor Fussell has joined.
Ah, right. Okay.
The minutes have been approved, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now then we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is application number 24/0931/NCC. It's Getley Gwilt Yucca Farm, Getley Road, Getley, and the case officer is Anthony Pine. Anthony, would you make the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'll just pause to wait for the presentation to come up, which I think it has. So this application seeks planning permission to extend the time period of extraction and subsequent restoration works at an existing quarry to the 31st of December 2026 in terms of extraction, and the 31st of December 2034 in terms of restoration at Getley Gwilt Yucca Farm by Bryn Aggregates Limited. For context, on the aerial photo coming up before you now, you can see Bryn Quarry, which is situated at the farm, which is also a dairy farm. And in addition to that and the existing quarry, the applicant's other businesses activities include waste recovery and recycling, and an anaerobic digestion facility. In terms of the application site relative to the surrounding settlements, this can be broadly summarised as follows. Getley lies to the north, Pennebryn to the east, Trelewis to the west, and Nelson to the southwest. And the principle of the development is considered acceptable in terms of the quarrying operation, conforming to policies CW15 and minerals policies MN1 and CW23 within the adopted local plan. As outlined in the committee report, the quarry produces high specification aggregate for which there is a national and UK-wide need, and it's considered that the proposal can be justified under National Planning Policy Wales and Minerals Technical Advice Note 1. Members may recall that they resolved to grant planning permission for an extension to the quarry at the February 2025 Planning Committee, which would permit extraction for a longer period of time and closer to residential properties than the application under consideration tonight. This application was advertised via a press notice and site notices. 31 responses have been received at the time of completing the report, and 2 ward councillors have also provided objections. These are summarised within the committee report. Consultees have raised no objections apart from the Community Council detailed in the report. The matters raised in the objections outlined in detail in the officer report. However, the main material planning concerns expressed can be summarised as concerns over dust and air quality, noise, odour, vibration, traffic impacts, impacts on wildlife and the environment. As I stated, these matters are addressed in the officer report, and it's considered that the proposed quarrying works can be adequately controlled by planning conditions, which are proposed at the end of the report. I do have an item of late correspondence to report to members. Following completion of the committee report, a representation has been received from Senate member Lindsay Whittle. I will now read this out. I wish to object to the application to extend the quarry application for a further 2 years. My constituents living in Pennybryn and Gelligaer have had to put up with living with the problems caused by the quarry for way too long. They had expected that they would eventually get some relief because the operations were limited. However, the time has continued to be extended and they will continue to suffer. Surely it is time to say enough is enough. So, Chair, the application is recommended for approval as the principle of the development is acceptable, and with the conditions proposed will have an acceptable impact on the amenity of surrounding residential properties and the character of the area.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pine. We've got 5 speakers tonight. I've got an order for them here. Each of you are allowed 5 minutes to make a presentation. Just before you finish, about half a minute before you finish, I'll give you a reminder to wind up. The first speaker I've got is James Vakushin, is it? Is that the pronunciation? You can start whenever you wish, okay? And I'll time you, as I said, and give you a warning after 4.5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to represent residents from Gelligaer, Pengybryn, Nelson and Trelewis, communities that have lived far too long with the escalating impacts of the Bryn Group site. I moved here 10 years ago. With a background in the UK waste management sector, I know what responsible operators look like and can tell you now that this community is endured is not normal and is not acceptable. I've heard the stories, I've stood in people's homes, and I've seen people reduced to tears. I've been in tears myself. The impacts on daily life are relentless. Tonight's proposal is presented as a minor variation conditions. To local people, it's just another attempt to loosen restrictions on an operation that's already dominating their lives. Last year's extension pushed the quarry 131 metres closer to homes and locked in extraction till 2044, with restoration until 2050. Residents cannot take just one more change, one more easing conditions, or one more increasing impact. That is why the community is asking for one thing tonight, a full refusal. Residents talk about children coughing, windows that can't be opened, and homes shaking from blasts, exhaustion from constant noise and constant anxiety. One resident told me she spent 2 maternity leaves at home, 2 years with her babies, overshadowed by blasting, machinery and dust and traffic. Can you imagine living like that? Another worries for elderly and vulnerable neighbours who are home all day, exposed to vibration, smell and lorries that passes, and not to mention the school that borders the quarry. It's a health issue, a well-being issue and a human issue. Bryn Group have confirmed they operate their own dust and vibration monitoring equipment. Residents simply do not believe it's independent or sufficient. For years, they have begged for PM 2.5 monitoring, the dangerous fine dust linked to cardiovascular disease. Yet Caerphilly County Borough Council monitors PM 2.5 in town centres and traffic hotspots, but not a quarry besides homes and a school. NRW have said in public meetings that the complaints process includes asking the operator for information, particularly on orders. Residents say the outcomes are predictable. Almost everything is labelled as agricultural. Because of this, people have lost confidence in the system. The waste is visibly sitting on the hillside. Mattresses, plastic, debris is raised again and again, yet remains in place. Residents see it every day. It simply feels like neglect. Our roads are narrow, winding and residential, completely unsuitable for 25-ton lorries. Yet daily, those lorries thunder past schools, homes and vulnerable residents, shaking foundations and damaging bridges. Bryn Group record every lorry that leaves and enters, yet we've never been shown a traffic assessment report. We heard last year that moving peat would be a positive environmental outcome, but disturbing peat releases carbon, destroys habitat and takes decades to restore. There is simply nothing positive about it. When residents asked for Bryn Group's ESG policy to support its environmental claims, they were told it doesn't exist. It feels like greenwashing to us. The Quarry Liaison Group, described as vital by the late Heaven David, was disbanded in 2025. It was the only structured way residents could communicate with the operator. Its removal has left people feeling abandoned by both the operator and the council. I have never seen such political unity. Labour, Plaid Cymru, Conservatives, community councillors, county councillors, members of Senedd, members of Parliament, all from different boroughs, all standing with residents. Cross-party unity at this scale is extraordinary. No one is anti-quarry. Residents simply want proof there's no alternative before decades more of impact and further restrictions are lifted. It is impacting our villages. Residents want you to refuse this application outright and then require the operator to finally implement the protections the community has needed for years. Independent PM2.5 and PM10 and noise monitoring, HGV limits and enforcements, a genuine peat and biodiversity plan, and a reinstating of the liaison group that residents are heard. These measures are not needed for the existing quarry, but as conditions, not as conditions for more expansion. Councillors, this community has carried enough. They are exhausted, they're fearful, and they're desperate to be heard. Please decline this application, draw a line, and require the protections you should have put in place a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buhashin. And now Councillor Michelle Simmons from Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council, representing the adjoining Tree Lewis ward. You wish to speak as well? Are you online?
I am, Chair.
Yeah, you heard me mention the fact that you have 5 minutes to make a presentation, okay?
I did, Chair, thank you. Chair, members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I am County Councillor Michelle Simmons, serving Tree Lewis and Bedlinog, addressing you today as a neighbouring local authority, Merthyr Tydfil councillor, and on behalf of residents who do not live within Caerphilly County Borough, but those who are directly and increasingly affected by the activities at Bryn Quarry and the wider Bryn Group site. While this application is presented as a time extension only, I ask the committee to look beyond the narrow description and consider the real-world and cumulative impacts on communities beyond your boundary. The incremental expansion and cumulative harm. This site did not become a major industrial complex overnight. Over many years, repeated incremental applications have transformed what was once a farm into a combined quarry, waste management, recycling, and anaerobic digestion operation, steadily expanding closer to the residential communities in both Caerphilly and Merthyr Tydfil. Each application in isolation may appear modest. Taken together, they amount to a progressive intensification of industrial use with no meaningful breathing space for residents. This proposal extends that impact yet again, prolonging disruption for the people who have already endured years of noise, blasting, dust, odour and HGV traffic. The environmental risk and loss of trust. Residents have recently witnessed further incidents involving the pollution of local water courses affecting the Taff Bargoed River system. Natural Resources Wales have confirmed contamination and are investigating. This is not an isolated concern. The operator has previously been enforced against for burying plastics on land associated with this site. This raises an important planning question. Can the committee reasonably rely on conditions and mitigation when there is ongoing evidence of non-compliance and environmental harm? Extending operational time also extends the environmental risk, particularly where the activities take place uphill from residential areas and watercourses that flow beyond this authority's boundary. The impact beyond Caerphilly County Borough. Although this application sits administratively with Caerphilly County Borough Council, its impacts do not stop at the county line. Communities in Merthyr Tydfil, particularly the residents in the Tree Lewis adjacent areas, experience the heavy goods vehicle movements, odour from food digestate spreading, dust and airborne particles, noise and vibration from blasting, anxiety over water pollution and land stability. These residents have no vote in this authority, yet bear the consequences of your decisions. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act requires public bodies to think long-term and collaboratively, including impacts on neighbouring communities. Community health and well-being. Planning policy requires more than technical compliance, it requires judgment. Residents, including families and children, describe chronic stress, disturbed sleep, reduced outdoor enjoyment, and declining quality of life. This application would extend those impacts yet again, with no certainty that this is truly the end, given the pattern of fallback and parallel applications already acknowledged in the officer's report. At what point does temporary become effectively permanent? Request to the committee is that I respectfully ask members to give significant weight to cumulative and cross-boundary impacts, to consider whether the operation's compliance history undermines confidence in effective control, reflect on whether expanding disruption for a further period is genuinely compatible with residents' right to quiet enjoyment and environmental protection, and ask whether after years of expansion, the balance is tilted too far away from local communities. This decision will not just shape a quarry timetable, but it will shape people's daily lives for years to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. And now the next speaker we have is Councillor Anne Gare, who is a local ward member. She is speaking in objection as well. Councillor Gare, you can start whenever you wish.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and members, for giving me the opportunity tonight to speak on behalf of residents of Gelligair, Pen-y-Bryn and surrounding areas. Long-standing members of the Planning Committee will have seen me here many times over the past 9 years, speaking out against planning applications from Bryn Group, which are relentless in number and endless nightmare for residents. As most of you will be aware, gradual incremental planning applications over many years have resulted in a small but typically mixed farm growing into a massive waste management and quarrying development, encroaching ever closer to people's homes. Local residents are not only subjected to noise from blasts with their homes shaken and damaged, but also to constant machine noise, 25-ton lorries going through narrow roads in their small villages, mud on the highway from the lorries, dust from the quarry operations, the disappearance of common land, and the quarry encroaching ever closer to their homes. The raising of the level by tipping on a significant area of land fronting the villages of Pen-y-Bryn and Gelligair and the construction of a bund around it were almost completed before a planning application was even registered. The report states that the existing permission is presently controlled by planning conditions, which include restrictions of hours of quarrying and blasting, which would be reimposed. However, the developers have a poor track record of compliance with existing planning consent and is the subject of many complaints. Unfortunately, residents have lost confidence in the process of logging complaints raised surrounding Bryn Group with either the local authority or NRW. You will be aware that the developers have already been served with a Section 59 notice and admitted breaches and unauthorised activity. The local planning authority does not have the officer capacity to ensure planning conditions are complied with, rendering conditions worthless in controlling development. Although there has been evidence of continuing unauthorised activity on the site over many years, breaches of planning conditions have been left to local residents to record and report. The report states the impact on the highway network will be broadly the same, albeit for a longer period, stating that it has an acceptable impact. However, acceptable impact is not how the residents of Gelligair, Pen-y-Bryn and Nelson would view this. These residents have been badly affected by huge lorries travelling along Gelligair Road and through the small village and narrow roads of Pen-y-Bryn and thundering through Nelson. The site is within a special landscape area and partially within a green wedge. The report states that the development will have an effect on protected wildlife species and refers to an advisory note as a precautionary measure. However, the applicant does not have a good track record on the protection of wildlife and conditions attached to planning consent, as with the previously expressed disappointment of officers in the failure to provide bird boxes included in previous consent. The report also refers to high specification aggregates being of importance to the UK, but we all know that with the completion of the Heads of the Valleys, there is no significant road building in Wales. Members, if this application is agreed tonight, residents face the prospect of having to continue to suffer the effects of the activities at the quarry. As already mentioned, the daily grind of noise and dust contributes to considerable hidden suffering, with increased levels of stress and anxiety, which cannot be underestimated as a factor in causing long-term physical and mental health conditions. I ask you to please weigh up the arguments for and against this proposal very carefully, and I urge you to listen to the legitimate concerns of ward members and residents who have suffered years of a living nightmare. What was once a lovely village with beautiful landscapes has now turned into an expansion of an industrialist site encroaching on the community. As you can see, there has been a constant stream of planning applications from this company, and residents are left wondering when this nightmare will end. This application has taken, for the 2-year extension, has taken a year to come before planning. In the meantime, Bryn Aggregates have been allowed to continue quarrying. Please give the residents some reprieve, if only for a specific time before the approved planning consent comes into force. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gare. Now the final person speaking objection is Councillor Hayden Pritchard. You can start as well whenever you wish, Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, councillors and members of the public, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Hayden Pritchard and I'm a St Cadw Ward councillor and represent the local residents of Gethlygare and Pen y Bryn. I'm here this evening to object to this proposed extension of the Bryn Aggregates quarry in Gethlygare. For years, our community has endured the noise, dust and heavy traffic from quarrying. Extending these operations will only worsen these issues, undermining our quality of life. One of the most pressing concerns is air quality. Quarry activities generate fine dust particles, PM10 and PM2.5, that are small enough to be inhaled deep into the lungs and enter the bloodstream. Recent monitoring in Caerphilly shows PM2.5 levels of between 4 to 7 micrograms per cubic metre and PM10 levels of between 9 and 14 micrograms per cubic metre. These figures are close to or above the World Health Organization's recommended annual limits of 5 micrograms per cubic metre for PM2.5 and 15 for PM10. Long-term exposure to PM10 and PM2.5 increase the risk of asthma, chronic bronchitis and reduced lung function. Studies show that people living near quarries report higher rates of chronic cough, chest tightness and allergies. Lung function tests reveal significantly lower capacity among those exposed to quarry dust compared to those living further away. Fine particles can enter the bloodstream, contributing to high blood pressure, heart attacks and strokes. The UK Health Security Agency estimates that air pollution contributes to thousands of premature deaths each year, mainly due to heart and lung diseases. Children, the elderly, and people with pre-existing conditions are especially at risk. Even short-term spikes in pollution can trigger asthma attacks and hospital admissions. Longer-term exposure to particulate matter is linked to increased rates of lung cancer and may contribute to autoimmune diseases. The extension will also mean a continued high volume of lorries on our roads. These vehicles are also a major source of air pollution and congestion. Our village roads are not designed for this volume of heavy traffic, raising safety concerns for pedestrians and increasing the noise pollution. The extension threatens local habitats and wildlife, diminishing the natural beauty of Gethlygare and the surrounding area. Once lost, these habitats cannot be easily restored. We should be protecting our countryside for future generations, not sacrificing it for the short-term gain. Living next to an expanding quarry creates anxiety and uncertainty. It affects our sense of community and belonging. We must ask, is the financial benefit worth the cost to our health and our environment? I urge the Council to consider the cumulative impact of continued quarrying, not just this single proposal. The people of Gethlygare have already sacrificed enough. It's time to put our health, safety and environment first. In closing, I respectfully ask you to reject this proposed extension by the Bryn Group. It's time to give the residents of Gethlygare and Pen y Bryn a break and allow them to enjoy the same noise-free, pollution-free and dust-free environment that the rest of us take for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Finally, we have the agent, Mr. Joe. I always get confused. Sorry about your name. Ayub Ajani, is it?
Yeah.
My apologies, sir.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. My name's Joe Ayukani. I'm the planning agent for Bryn Aggregates. Firstly, I'd like to note that this application was submitted quite a while ago in 2024, and Bryn Group have stayed engaged with the council throughout. They remain committed to good controls on site and to a positive working relationship with local residents, the community council and other stakeholders. Today's application is quite simple. It's not about a new quarry and it's not about expanding the site. It's an application to extend the existing permission for a further year so the quarry can continue operating until the 31st of December, with an associated extension to the restoration timescales by 2 years. In short, it's about giving the site enough time to finish what's already been approved, with no change to the working area. As a committee, members are often asked to make difficult decisions, weighing up a lot of competing issues. In this case, the principle of the quarry is long established, and members have already resolved to grant the longer-term extension under application 240525 last year. In that context, this application is essentially a short, controlled continuation. I also want to stress the importance of the site. Bryn Quarry is one of the very few sites providing high specification aggregate that is used for things like road surfacing and skid resistance. This kind of material is important for maintaining and supporting local and national infrastructure. We recognise the local concerns that have been raised this evening. Bryn Group understands those concerns. In terms of monitoring, this is continuously undertaken and made available voluntarily to residents by Bryn Group. Air quality and dust, a fixed monitoring station collecting both PM10 and PM2.5 data, is located between the quarry and the surrounding villages. Bryn Group make available this data, and no issues have been raised. The quarry carries out controlled blasts around 50 times per year. That's 15 times, 15. Each blast is monitored and published online to confirm that all operations are within the permitted levels. Having said that, the key point today is that this proposal does not increase the scale of what's already allowed. It keeps the existing limits in place, including controls on working hours, HGV movements, blasting and vibration, and noise, dust, and general site management. Bryn Group take all of their responsibilities very seriously. They have a tree planting programme in place with over 15,000 trees being implemented as we speak. Lastly, I'd like to highlight the substantial economic benefits of the site. It supports skilled local jobs, brings spending into the local economy through the use of local suppliers and contractors. Bryn Group also support community organisations and grassroots sports clubs, including Nelson and Penalta Rugby Club and Getlegare Football Club. Bryn Group remain committed to supporting these groups and ongoing engagement with the local community. So to conclude, this is a straightforward application to allow operations to continue at an existing site for a limited period under the same established controls and to complete restoration properly. On that basis, we respectfully ask members to support the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to summarise on a few issues that have been raised, and I think we need clarification. I think every person that has spoken against this application has mentioned dust, noise and vibration. Is it possible that the officers can give some clarification as to whether there is any non-compliance or whether or not the levels are above what should normally be? We've got Kerry. Kerry Davis is online, I believe. Oh, she's there. I can see you.
Hello, Chair. My name's Kerry Davis.
Kerry, can you clarify, please, on these issues?
Yeah, certainly. Kerry Davis, I'm the Environmental Health Officer for this site and the Team Leader for Pollution Control. So if I start with the PM10 and PM2.5 that some of the speakers mentioned. So currently, we've got concentrations in the UK for PM10, which state that there should be a maximum annual average of 40 micrograms per metre cube. and an annual average for PM2.5 for 20 micrograms per metre cubed. Now, there's also a target level which needs to be complied with by 2040, and that is an annual average of 2.5 PM2.5 of 10 10 micrograms per metre cubed. Now, we have a PM10 monitor in Bryn Hylog Street in Gelligare. So I've had a look at our readings. The only annual readings I've got, because the data has to be ratified by our consultants, so I've only got the 2024 annual averages to hand. But our PM10 annual average at Gelligare is 7 micrograms per metre cubed. That is only for PM10. But like I said, the more stringent 2040 target for PM2.5 is 10 micrograms per metre cubed. So even if all of the PM10 we monitored consisted wholly of PM2.5, which is unlikely, we would still be below the 2040 target of 10, because we're currently reading 7. So at the moment, like I said, that's 2024 data, not 25. But we find that the data is pretty static in this location. It doesn't fluctuate massively from the annual averages. So from obviously our point of view, from the evidence we have, we are not currently concerned about PM10 or PM2.5 in this area as it currently stands. With regards to the complaints, I've looked back at our complaints for 2025 regarding dust, vibration and noise. We have 5 complaints registered against Bryn Quarry, 3 related to blasts, 1 of dust, 1 of vibration and 1 of noise. And then we had 2 additional complaints regarding what is often known as the pecker or the hammer. That's normally used after a blast. If there's a little bit that hasn't quite been blasted sufficiently, often on the floor of the quarry, they use a machine called a pecker or a hammer to hammer out those last sort of extra bits. It is quite a noisy piece of kit, but there are restrictions on this in the mineral tanning guidance that state that these extra, particularly noisy activities should only be undertaken between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. for up to 8 weeks of the year, with a maximum sound level of 67 dBA measured as a 1 hour LAQ. We haven't measured the noise on these 2 occasions, but we did, like I say, receive those 2 complaints. But they look to be 2 fairly isolated complaints, not over a significant period of time. We also have a permit. The quarry is permitted by ourselves in the pollution team. So they were last inspected in February 2025. So they will be due an inspection February, March 2026. So they will be due an inspection imminently. But the permit inspection didn't raise any concerns regarding dust in particular. That's the main area that the permit covers. So hopefully I've answered everyone's queries regarding that. But if you obviously have anything specific, let me know and I'll do my best. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. We have one person asking a question. Was it Councillor Powell? Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sorales. Page 1, I'm a little bit confused with it. It's asking for a 2-year extension for the extraction of minerals. And yet it says extraction of minerals will cease by 2026. Why hasn't it been a 1-year extension? I don't know if I read it incorrectly. It's just why they're asking for 2 years when the extraction finishes at the end of the year.
Yeah, the application was submitted, I believe, Christmas Eve 2024. So as originally submitted, it will be 2 years, but the balance remaining now in terms of making a decision would be to the end of 1 year.
This is 1 year, right? Okay, yeah, thanks for that.
If I could, you mentioned vibration, Chair. If you're finished,
sure,
Councillor, is that okay? Just to drop in on vibration, the the quarry operates with a planning condition which is proposed to be reimposed. That's condition 12, just for members' sort of advice, and that restricts each blast in terms of 95% of the blasts in any 6-month period to 4 millimetres per second, and an overall limit of 8 millimetres per second. Now, just to sort of highlight that the national guidance in terms of minerals technical advice note recommends a higher vibration limit. So where that 4 millimetres per second in 95% of all blasts over a 6-month period, the minerals technical advice note actually allows up to 6 millimetres per second. And where the 8 upper limit under this planning condition in national guidance, that's suggested at 10 millimetres per second. So it is a greater restriction on the quarry operator in terms of blasts, and blast results have shown that they are in compliance with that condition and have been. So it is subject to tighter regulations in terms of vibration than sort of national guidance recommends, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Pine. We've now got was there any follow-up? Yeah, Councillor Powell?
Yeah, there were a few more questions I had, Councillor Sorales. I looked at the history on this. There's been 18, it looks like 18 applications. It is a constant barrage, and I know some of the speakers have spoken earlier about that. My concern is of what it looks like 18 applications, the last 5, we've got 1 refused appeal pending, 1 pending consideration, 1 prior approval required, another pending consideration, and 1 awaiting a 106. They're the last 5 on the list. And my question is, do we actually know where we are at the moment? It's a similar question to what I've asked in earlier applications from this company. You know, without those actually in place, do we really know where this one sits in the bigger picture? Like, for me, I would like this one deferred until some of these are cleared up, because this ongoing barrage of application after application, I'm just unsure and unclear on where this one actually sits and what the implication of, if we look at the appeal pending one, if that appeal goes through, what does this look like with that appeal going through? I very rarely go against officers' recommendations, but on this one, it's just so confusing. There's so many pendings and this last 5. I really am struggling to give this really, to be clear on where we are with it.
Okay.
You know, and I do understand, you know, I know on page 9 it questions that there is 1 pending that supersedes this. So should this one just be deferred until that appeal has gone through? Okay, I do have another question. I'm happy to come back in with that one later.
Could we have some clarification on that then, please?
Yeah. Yes, we do know where we are. Just for your advice, obviously, it is as I think I outlined at the start of the presentation, it is overall quite a large site with different items going on, including the dairy farm and the recycling. In terms of the quarry, as this application relates, as we've said, to a sort of a limited time period on the existing quarry area. The application that's pending, the Section 106, and also the appeal in abeyance, both relate to sort of the quarry extension, which is sort of further north and east of this existing area. But in terms of this application, it's quite clear. It's for a limited time period, as you mentioned, until the end of the year for extraction. And then, in any case, there would be a period of restoration of the existing quarry area. And all this seeks to do is extend that by sort of 2 years. The restoration is anticipated would occur and is required to occur under previous permitted development. So in terms of focusing on this application, it's really the limited time period till the end of the year for the extraction, and then the restoration will progress, albeit with the additional 2 years at the end of the period.
Okay, does that satisfy you in terms of response, Councillor Powell?
Sort of, you know what I mean? Again, without having all the other applications in front of us, you know, it's difficult again. The trouble is we're taking all of these in isolation. We're not dealing with one single site with multiple applications. It's just not sitting comfortable for me with these multiple applications outstanding, to be honest with you. And the other question I did have, sorry, like I said, I would like this one deferred until we got clarity on the pending ones. The other question I did have was, I believe there are 18 conditions on this one. Would that be right? Are there 18 conditions? Yeah, you know, that does seem a lot of conditions on an application. And with these 18 conditions, how are we checking these conditions are being met? If we're relying on the public themselves making the complaints, and it's already been highlighted the public are fed up making a complaint, how are we enforcing these considerations? Okay, thank you.
If I could come in on this one, Chair.
Come in, Mr. Cowen.
Yeah, if I can come in on this one. In terms of the first point by Councillor Powell, I think it's important to note that Gellir Gwaith Farm, as the name suggests, is a farm as well as the operations that are before us today. So you've got a farm, you've got anaerobic digestion and waste recycling, and you've got the quarrying. So two of the applications you referred to, which was the prior notification, prior approval required, and then a pending application, they are related entirely to the agricultural operations of the site. Prior approval is where agricultural holdings can say, I want to put up a building for agricultural purposes. Do I need the approval of the council for that building? So the submission came in, and this was actually for agricultural improvement of land the opposite side of Gellir Road, to be honest with you. So we looked at that and said, yes, we think prior approval is required for that. The agent then has submitted a separate application with the details of that application. So they are totally unrelated to the quarrying operations, totally unrelated to the waste operations, and they're actually well divorced geographically from this site as well, in all honesty. So they are, to a large extent, irrelevant to the determination of today's application. In terms of this application and then the application which is subject to an appeal and the application which has been resolved to approve by members, this application is for a specific area, the existing quarry, and it looks to extend it for a further year from today's date. It was 2 years from the date of submission of the application, but it's obviously now a year's lapsed, so we're looking at a year from today's date. Okay, well, less than a year, because it's up to the 31st of December. The application which is subject to an appeal and the application which is subject to a Section 106 cover exactly the same area. Application was submitted to this committee, and members resolved to refuse that application, and the agent and the applicant appealed against that decision. They then entered into negotiations with the local authority and said, look, we don't want to appeal that decision, really. We can do, but we don't want to appeal it. We'd rather work with you and come up with a scheme which is viable and works for the authority in terms of the controls you can implement on it. Hence why we had the application which was approved members resolved to approve the application subject to a Section 106 last year. That application effectively would supersede the application as subject to an appeal. The applicant hasn't yet withdrawn that appeal because we haven't yet approved the application as subject to Section 106 because the Section 106 hasn't been signed. Immediately that Section 106 is signed, the appeal will be withdrawn, that falls away. Doesn't exist anymore, effectively. We don't have that application. So what we're looking at here is effectively for quarrying on this site, 2 applications, one of which members have already resolved to approve. That application is for land which is closer to residents than this quarry we're looking at today. It's subject to the same controls. It's acceptable in terms of environmental impacts. Kerry's mentioned the PM10 and PM2.5. In terms of vibration, Anthony's mentioned the monitoring that goes on in respect of that. From a planning perspective, as a planning authority, we have no reasons to recommend refusal of this application to members. I appreciate the concerns raised by residents, and they've been very strong in those concerns, and I understand the feeling they have in the community. As a planning authority, we as officers have to advise members on the basis of guidance and legislation set out by the government, and then guidance and legislation set out by bodies which regulate health and protection of the environment. So in terms of those matters, You've been advised by officers here who know more about these matters than I do today, that the environmental impacts of this development are in accordance with guidance and legislation that's out there. As members, I would urge you to listen to the advice that's been given to you by professional advisors today. They've advised you on the basis of the guidance and legislation that's before us, and we cannot, as officers, in all good faith, recommend that you refuse this application. There are no good planning reasons that we can see that you could refuse this application. If you do refuse this application, I'm sure that the applicant will appeal against that decision. That, as I've advised members previously on this matter, I've advised members this is exactly the same thing 2 years ago, quite frankly. If they appeal against that decision, we cannot take enforcement action whilst that appeal is being considered. So the operations at the quarry can then continue unrestricted by any other conditions. That is what members have to consider here. By approving this application, you have adequate controls from a planning perspective and from an environmental health perspective over this quarry, which we can impose and we can control and will monitor moving forward. The other thing that I hesitate to say this, but I become a little bit angry when I come to these committees and I hear residents saying that the council is not investigating complaints and not monitoring operations at the quarry. I can assure you that we do. Kerry's mentioned the number of enforcement complaints public health complaints they've received. I can tell you that our records show we've received 17 complaints about Geltligwet Quarry, and this is, Geltligwet Farm, all of the operations over a 14-year period. Only 17 complaints we've received over a 14-year period. All of those complaints have been investigated, and in one instance, there was an incident of engineer operations on the land. An application was submitted for that and was approved. And we have a current case which is outstanding, which actually covers the development that's before members today. Because the life of this quarry ended 31st of December last year, effectively. So we received a complaint in January saying that they are still quarrying there. They are, but they have an application in to extend the life of that quarry. So again, we cannot take action until we determine this application. If members refuse it, then we could look at taking enforcement action. Whether it's expedient to do so, bearing in mind we've granted an extension to the area of the quarrying, is highly debatable, quite frankly, to be honest with you. But out of those 17 complaints we've had, over all of the operations, over all of the farm, there are only 2 cases where there has been a breach evidenced. An application was received and approved for the one, and the other one is covered by this application that's before us today. So as an officer with 30 years experience in planning, I could not in good conscience sit here and recommend to any member in this room that you should refuse this application.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Power.
Could I come back in there?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Carl.
I know there's two other speakers waiting, so yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's only a quick one. You did say that some of the history of the plan applications are relevant because they link with the farm, and yet the application heading, the applicant is Bryn Aggregates. So could I ask that the history would identify those are the Bryn Aggregates and those are the farm? Is it the same company? Because when you look at, like I said, the 18 or whatever, or the 11, whatever it was, planning application over the last couple of years, they are not all Bryn Aggregates, and is that what we're being told? Mm-hmm. So I would ask that if the applicant is Bryn Aggregates, could we just have on the history the Bryn Aggregates applications? It is confusing. Okay, that was all. Thank you.
Forward, yeah.
Okay. Right, then the next speaker we've got then is Councillor Shane Williams. Got Greg Eade as well, Councillor Greg Eade and Councillor Dix. So, Councillor Shane Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I note what Carwyn said, that if we refuse this, then the conditions that are suggested cannot be imposed. And I remember Carwyn saying, giving us the advice the last time we had this before us, or certainly the other part of the quarry that has been extended, I think to 2044 was the date. But looking at page 10, and it mentions extending the time and balancing this against the impact on the residents of these activities if these activities are being prolonged. Because I'm not sure if, and I take what the residents are saying, that all the environmental impacts that they experience are acceptable to them. And it is, I suppose, concerning that there might never be an end to this, because, as you say, it was supposed to have ended last year, but now they come back to extend it for another year. And there is nothing stopping them coming back in October next year to extend it again. And it might be, as we found out last time, that the residents are stuck in some sort of doom loop with regards to this quarry, that there is a never-ending sight to it. The restoration is being pushed back. We've seen that elsewhere. The councillor from Merthyr spoke. We've seen the impact there in Phosphran, not relevant to this, but we all see how the restoration doesn't go as planned. And I'm just concerned that there is no way out, because if the recommendation is always, it's just another year, we can put conditions on, it's just another year, we can add conditions on, there's no environmental impact, where will it ever end for these residents? And so I'm not sure that the environmental impacts are totally mitigated against. And I know we approved the last application, and some of us had deep reservations even about that. That's all I've got to say at this moment, Chair. Thank you.
Well, it is a situation that we either accept the scientific facts or we don't. And we've been given the scientific facts, I think, here tonight. It's whether or not you're prepared to accept them or not. It's entirely in your hands as a committee. Councillor Greg Eade.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, we've heard so many arguments against Bryn Quarry from residents tonight, and I do appreciate that we can't set any store by emotive arguments. We have to base our decision purely on the facts, as planning policy in particular that relates to Wales and the local authority. I've got a couple of questions, Chair, and then some other points if I'd like to make. So first of all, with regard to the incremental nature of the concept, I think Councillor Powell mentioned there's been 18 applications from this on this site over the past 10 years. Planning Policy Wales, I've got the specific paragraph if people want it, requires mineral extensions to be assessed as new applications, including their cumulative impact on the site and surrounding area. And our own policy in our own local development plan, policy CW2, resists development where cumulative impacts result in unacceptable harm to residential amenity. So based on that, I would like to ask the officers, have they assessed the cumulative impact over time of this quarry and the associated industrial activity on residential amenity rather than treating this extension in isolation? That's my first question.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reid. Can we have a response?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the cumulative impact has been assessed. Obviously, I think has been touched upon. There are more activities than just quarrying being carried out on the wider farm site. So some of those applications may be on the other areas. What I think is probably best to explain is in terms of the buffer zone of the quarrying from residents, both with this application and the quarry extension, it's still a greater separation distance than Minerals Technical Advice Note sort of recommends as a minimum distance. And as I've alluded to before, conditions including vibration are tighter than National Planning Policy gives as sort of good practice. So yes, we appreciate that, and as a planning authority, we have to deal with applications. There's a duty to deal with applications as they're submitted. So we can't stop anyone submitting applications. But what we have done and what we continue to do on this site is, as applications are lodged, we assess them, noting the planning history of applications either under consideration or having previously been granted. We take advice of internal and external consultees, including Environmental Health. I think Natural Resources Wales have raised no objection. Highways Department have raised no objection. In fact, Merthyr Tydfil, as the actual council and the local planning authority, they have not submitted an objection to this application, albeit I appreciate that a councillor has spoken tonight. But on each and every occasion, we consult with technical consultees internally and externally. We take into consideration, as I've said, planning history and planning applications lodged, decided and under consideration. So we do assess the cumulative impact with each application that we receive, and we have to deal with them as required.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pine. You still want to come back in, I think, Councillor Reid, didn't you? You
Yeah.
said you had another question.
Yes, thanks, Chair, if I may then. So we've heard objections tonight from a variety of different people, residents, local community and county councillors, and a member of the Senedd, with regard to the impact on those residents' stress of their both their mental and physical health, these works causing stress, anxiety, disturbed sleep, and long-term mental and physical impacts. Look, these aren't trivial concerns, okay? They are material planning considerations under Welsh policy and the Wellbeing Act, especially when the impacts are prolonged, as we've seen. These are not just an isolated short-term periods. So given what, I appreciate what the officer has just said in terms of controlling these with conditions, but the conditions don't seem to be working, because we've had a history of 18 applications over 10 years. And if the conditions had been enforced and were working, we would see local residents no longer raising these issues of impacts on both their physical and mental health. The fact that they still are doing this after over 10 years says to me that these are very significant, serious impacts on people. And I just think, personally, we are in, I think we're not just impacting on the health of residents. It appears to be contradictory to the policy CW2 of our local development plan, where development should not result in unacceptable harm to residential amenity. So in my view, the incremental extension of these impacts for over a decade has crossed that threshold now. And given the evidence of effects on health, wellbeing and quality of life, for these reasons, I just cannot support this application tonight. Thanks very much.
Are you moving anything then, Councillor Reid, or are you just saying?
I'm not going to move. I'll just vote against.
At this stage then, Councillor Dix.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah.
You're on mute, Councillor Dix.
Sorry, I thought I took it off. Sorry, Chair. I think we can all agree this is a very complicated and emotive application. We're looking at tonight the extension of this quarry. Officers, what struck me was officers said if we refuse this application, the operator will go to appeal. Can the officers tell us how long it would be before that would appeal be heard, and what would be would they still be able to operate while that appeal was before it was heard? Carwyn.
I think that was clarified before. Would you come back in, is it, Mr. Powell?
Yes, Chair. How long is a piece of string, quite frankly, with an appeal of this sort of nature? Effectively, PEDU have got 12 weeks to determine a household appeal. There's no upper limit, I think, for this sort of case of sort of appeal. You're talking about a very complicated issue. You're looking at availability of inspectors and availability of professionals who can comment on these sort of matters. So you're talking well in excess of 6 months. I would suggest that they're unlikely to hear an appeal about this matter from for 12 months after the date of refusal, to be perfectly honest with you. Bearing in mind that the developer, if they wanted to, could string it out. They don't have to make an appeal as soon as they get a refusal. They've got 12 months to do so. They could do so, wait the whole 12 months, then put an appeal in. And then the 12-month process of actually considering the appeal starts. So, I can't really answer how quickly an appeal can be heard. But what I can say is that given the concerns raised in the report and the answers given to the concerns raised by residents, and the fact that members have resolved to grant consent for an extension to the area of the quarrying, I think as officers and as an authority, we would have difficulty defending such an appeal if one was made.
So just for my own peace of mind then, Karen, so how long's a piece of string? It could be quite a substantial amount of time before the appeal could be heard, if an appeal was lodged by the operator. And in that time, they would still be able to operate as they are currently. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
So you could argue that by not accepting this tonight, you're actually giving them a blank check.
You could. I mean, clearly we've got an application which members have resolved to approve for 6 months to make an appeal. Sorry, I did give an extra 6 months then. It is 6 months from date of refusal for making an appeal, but you are still looking at 18 months effectively. So we have an application which members have resolved to approve. Now, if it's 18 months to determine the appeal on this one, chances are the consent for the extension to the quarrying will have been approved, and they can commence operations on that. The impact on the residents, whether you think it's acceptable or not, is not going away, even if we refuse this application. Because even if they don't carry on quarrying on this part of the site, they will be able to quarry on the new part of the site. As officers, we've advised you that the impacts are considered to be acceptable from a planning perspective. I appreciate that some members, and certainly the members of the public, don't agree with that view, and you could say it's a subjective opinion in respect of that. Clearly, we make our opinions on the basis of the evidence put into applications and the evidence that's given to us by statutory consultees who feed into that process. So, yes, we've made a subjective opinion based on the evidence that's before us. Quite frankly, if in that we have a resolution to approve the extension of the area of the quarrying, to refuse this application today will achieve little for the residents, in all honesty, because the extended part of the quarry will continue at some time in the future, and that will have the same, if not more, impact on residents, even though that's considered to be acceptable in planning terms.
Thanks for that, Karen. Just one supplementary, if you can indulge me, Chair. Obviously, they're not going to carry on quarrying if the stone isn't there. If they got all the stone out, do we know? Councillor Williams raised the point that they could come back for another application of extension, but obviously they would only come back if they thought there was more stone to get out, and getting that stone out was profitable to get it out. They had a market for it, and of course it was cost effective to do so. So I'm just wondering, do we know how much stone is left in that area? Have we got any idea?
You'd need a geologist to answer that question. Unfortunately, I'm not a geologist.
Okay.
Which I was, quite frankly, but but no, you would need a geologist who could tell you exactly, or could guesstimate how much stone is available in the area, quite frankly. But they've got special specification stone. It is needed, and I know there was a mention earlier on that now that the Heads of the Valleys is completed, there's no need for the stone. It's a nationally significant stone. It's not just for the Heads of the Valleys, it's for the whole of Wales and all of England as well. This council in itself has agreed to repair the roads at Troedrewch. The council may well be needing the stone for doing those works. So there is a need for the stone even in the local area. That has to be borne in mind in determining this application, because we have to weigh the need for the stone against the impacts. So even if it was considered the impacts were unacceptable, it may be that the need for the stone outweighs those impacts as well. In this instance, we've got the need for the stone and the fact that the impacts are considered to be acceptable in planning terms. That's where we're at as officers in terms of recommending approval of the application, really.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell.
Okay, thanks for that, Chair. Thanks for that, Carwyn.
Okay, the hands are piling up again. So we've got Councillor Fussell, and then I think Councillor Powell, Councillor Eade, and Councillor Bissex-Foster wants to make a contribution. So, Councillor Fussell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Rock and a hard place is appropriate when you're dealing with quarries, I suppose. There is that little bit of confusion in relation to the application that was granted last year, the 0525, which gives the fallback position as described in the report till 2044 and finishing in 2050. Am I reading this wrong? That still will apply once that 106 come into place, and this application that's before us tonight has no bearing on that application. Just clarify that, really. That's all I'm looking for. And perhaps is there a reason why the 106 has not been completed? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Pine.
Yeah, so if the other application progresses to be issued with the signing of the Section 106 agreement, just to advise, I'm sure the agent won't mind me saying that there has been dialogue and our legal department is working on that agreement. So that is progressing. So if that is issued, as stated by the councillor, that would permit an extension to the quarry, so the area closer to residents would be permitted for extraction. So the two applications sort of have the ability to stand alone, and as saying that other application, he mentioned the timescales up to 2044, I think, for extraction, with a separation distance less than the existing quarry area because it surrounds it.
Okay. Right. Did you want to come back, Councillor Fussell, or is that's all you need to?
I probably still didn't quite catch. So yes is the answer to the question. Then I presume that permission is not going to be voided if this current one that we're discussing tonight goes through.
Sorry,
it's a case that will always.
Yes, you're correct. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That clears it. Thank you.
Okay. Then we go back to. I'll call in Councillor Bissex-Foster because she hasn't made a contribution yet. And then the other two members who still have their hands up come in afterwards. Okay. So Councillor Bissex-Foster.
Yeah. About 18 months ago, when I just first became a councillor, I had a complaint about this from an anonymous person who, for some reason, wouldn't give me his details. And that worried me a lot at the time. And I looked into it, but I couldn't respond to him because he was afraid to give me his details. Now, that did really worry me a lot at the time because I was wondering, why would he be afraid to complain about this thing? And, what would be the effect of that? And I know from the officers, they are dealing with facts and opinions, scientific facts. But at the end of the day, we're a council, and that council is there to provide a service and provide resources for our residents. And if we can't protect those residents in their daily, living, and we can't stop them having these problems. I can remember this gentleman was talking about the vibration that he constantly felt in his house and how life-changing that was. Yes, we can talk about the facts, but at the end of the day, if we were in that position and our own lives were being affected, what would we say?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. There isn't a question there, I don't think, Councillor Bissex-Foster. I think you just.
No, I just want to remind everybody about the fact that we have to consider our residents in everything that we do.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be a client-focused business.
Okay. Thank you. So, Councillor Mansell-Powell, we've got the hands have disappeared off you now. I'm not sure whether that's my computer has moved or what. But we've only got one hand left up here, and that's Councillor Mansell-Powell.
Okay, just to come back in what Councillor Fussell said about this 106, I'm still not clear on that. The officer replied, if there's an issue. It says that if, this is the fallback position if the applicant case, if the 106 doesn't go through. Where are we with the 106? Is it going to go through? Is there a doubt it's going to go through? Because although there's discussions taking place, what are the delays? Why isn't it signed off yet? Where are we in getting it signed off? And if there's a possibility that that's going to get signed off, can we defer this planning application? I'm a bit confused, the 106, where is all of ifs, buts and maybes on it, you know, and this seems to be the fallback plan. So what is the delay on the 106 and where are we actually with it? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Pine.
It's obviously discussions between the applicant and the council. It's probably not right for me to go into, you know, all the reasons, but what I can say is I have had recent correspondence from our legal department. They are drafting the agreement, and I see no reason why that would not progress to a signing. So obviously members resolved to grant that application subject to the completion of the legal agreement. What I can say is that that process is underway. You know, on the absence of any other evidence, I can only give you my sort of professional opinion that I believe that will be concluded, and I see no reason why that permission will not be issued.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pine.
Sorry, Chair. So if that's issued, this fallback plan wouldn't be needed?
It would be needed because that other that application with the Section 106 refers to an extension of the quarry, which is the land surrounding this area. So yes, it would still be needed.
Okay. Okay, I think we've given it a fair hearing tonight. There's no further indication from members of any further questions.
Chair.
Sorry?
Chair. Sorry, Chair. I put my hand down, put it back up, put it down,
Oh, sorry.
put it back up again.
Yeah, I can see now. Yeah, sorry.
Apologies. Can you indulge
flickering
just
on
one?
my screen now.
Yes. It's my fault being a bit schizophrenic. Would you indulge one more question?
In, yes.
Just picking up on both Carwyn and the other councillors' points. It's very, very complicated. There are so many, as Carwyn said, there's so many applications that are currently under consideration, and he's right to point out the Section 106. That's still ongoing. We, as members, we haven't had clarity on that, and that outstanding application affects this one. Now, the officer just said it would still be needed because it's an extension to the area of the quarry, and this one's a time extension. Correct me if I'm wrong, but application 24/0931, 02525, the previous one, is extending quarry operations and time. It says extraction could continue to the 31st December 2044 and restoration to the 30th of December 2050. So what is there about this application is not included in that application? I think at the very least, I agree with Councillor Powell, we should be deferring this. I won't be voting for it, but I think for us to get a full understanding of the interaction between the various applications, I don't feel comfortable making a decision tonight.
Just to come back to Councillor Eade, in terms of that specific query, it's the geographic extent. So this application, the boundary is the existing quarry area. The one pending the Section 106 is the surrounding land for the extension area. So they're two discrete land parcels.
Okay. It does cover a time extension.
Okay, you happy with this, with the response, Councillor Eade?
Not really, but it's fine. No problem.
Okay.
Chair, can I come in for a second on that? You've got two distinct areas of quarrying here. I'm not an expert in quarrying, but I know a little bit about this. Okay, so you've got the existing area of quarrying, which is the subject of this application. So that hasn't been fully quarried out yet, which is why they want the 12-month extension to the quarrying. To be able to quarry the bit that's subject to the Section 106, which is likely to be approved in the next month or so, clearly you'd have to quarry out the extent of the existing consented area, or the area that's subject to this consent, to work into the next part of the quarry. So this is needed so that they can basically physically get at the next part of the site, quite frankly, from a quarrying perspective, from a operational perspective, is my understanding. So yeah, that's why they want to continue with this and extend it for a further 12 months, because there's stone still left there. When that's quarried out, then they move into the next bit, which is subject to the Section 106. And that's not uncommon, and lots of quarries would work that way. You have to, because they do it by benching into the stone as well. So you'd end up with a level of stone there, a level of stone there, a level of stone there, and it goes further back. And you blast out the stone to loosen it, then you peck it to make it under the size of the stone you need to have. Then you have crushing machines and so on and so forth. But they would need to go through this part of the quarry to get to the new part of the quarry effectively, in simple terms. So that's why they want a 12-month extension to this, so that when they sign the Section 106 for the next bit, they just keep on quarrying straight into that part.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Power. Do you want to come back in?
Yeah. Oh, obviously, I'm not a quarry expert, but I would just like to clarify something then, because as I understand it, the restoration of the land is due to take place in 2034, something like that. They're going to extra 2 years. Now, if I'm not disputing your quarry knowledge, Carwyn, that they need this to get to the next place, but how does that impact then the restoration of the land in 2034 if they're still quarrying till 2044 at the next place?
My explanation now is going to be easier for the people in the room to see, because I'm going to use my hands, quite frankly. So you've got the existing area of the quarry, and then you've got the new area of the quarry. So as you move in further up here with the quarrying, you can follow in behind with the restoration. And you create access roads in to get into the new parts of the quarry. So you start moving that way, then you start working with the restoration here, and the restoration follows when you finish the quarry, and then you go in and do the complete restoration and restore the whole site. Clearly, there are issues as well. There are areas as well where there are bunds to be created which screen the quarrying as well. Those works can be ongoing, and some have been carried out whilst you're carrying out the quarrying operations. So there's a number of answers really, but basically you can do an incremental works like that.
That's great, Carwyn. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions then. Now we got to come to some decision on this. I sense that there's a feeling of concern about it. But remember that if you vote against this application, you've got to give planning reasons as to why you've actually made a decision on it. So is somebody going to move either the recommendation or an alternative one? Councillor Adams?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the officers for their extended qualifications of some of our questions tonight. It's been many, many years that I've been at this planning committee, listening to many of these applications from the same Bryn group, whether farm or the quarry. And I've often put my hand up and said, I vote for I propose the officer's recommendation. And from what we've heard again tonight, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to propose that we go for the officer's recommendation after listening to all of the answers that have been asked of them. So I'm looking for a seconder.
Do we have a seconder? I mean, at the end of the day, it comes to the vote for or against. So we need to have some recommendation on the floor. Councillor Aldworth, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, Chair, I would be prepared to second.
You're happy to second.
And I would add that it was very useful when we were able to visit the site as councillors to see what it was all about. that was very handy in knowing where the anaerobic digester was, where the cows were milked, and where this actual quarry was sited. So I would definitely second the officer's recommendation that this is approved, and it is beneficial if they could invite us up again for those who haven't ever visited to go and have a look. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I was part of the visit at the same time, and from my experience there, I mean there wasn't any quarrying, but certainly some of the concerns that have been expressed here, particularly about smells and that, I found no evidence of that at all. Anyway, it has been moved. Officers' recommendations have been moved and seconded. So I'm going to ask Vicky if she could put up the voting slip on this, please. So it's either for, against, or abstain. Can you cast your vote and then click the submit button?
Chair, the votes have been cast and the officer's recommendation has been carried.
Okay, thank you for that. If the people in the gallery wish to leave, if this is the application that they've come to listen to, then if you wish, you can leave now. We'll go on to the next application. That applies to the speakers as well. Okay. And the next application is agenda item 6, which is application number 25/0798, and it's a change of use at 10 Chapel Street, Aberbargoed, and the case officer is Josie Milson. Can you make the presentation, please, Josie?
Thank you, Chair. I will just grab up the presentation now. So this application is under the reference 25/0798/COU. The proposal seeks planning permission to change for a change of use from a dwelling, which is use class 3, to a 4-bedroom house in multiple occupation, use class T4, at 10 Chapel Street, Aberbargoed. The property is a 2-storey mid-terrace dwelling located on Chapel Street, a narrow residential street with on-street parking on one side. It currently has 3 bedrooms and a small forecourt to the front, with an enclosed rear garden accessed via a rear lane. The surrounding area is predominantly residential, with a church approximately 70 metres to the northwest and Aberbargoed Primary School around 140 metres to the southeast. The proposed development involves changing the use of the property from a 3-bedroom dwelling house to a 4-bedroom HMO. No external alterations are proposed to the property. Internally, the layout will be reconfigured to create an additional bedroom at the ground floor level. 5 cycle storage spaces will be provided within the rear garden as well. Placemaking policy SP6 requires developments to achieve a high standard of design and reinforce local distinctiveness. The proposal involves no external alterations. The appearance of the property and the character of the street will remain unchanged. It's also remaining residential. The use rate remains residential, which is consistent with the surrounding areas. Amenity policy CW2 ensures that development must not cause unacceptable harm to the amenity of adjacent properties. The application site will be housed for 4 occupants, which is comparable to a family dwelling. There are no external changes, so there will be no loss of light or privacy considered. Noise levels are not expected to be materially different from a typical household, as well as waste generated is considered to be similar to a family home, and space for bin storage has been allocated within the rear garden. Environmental Health has consulted on this application and found no objection to the proposal. Policy CW3 states that developments must ensure safe and efficient use of the transport network. The Transport Engineering Manager was consulted on the proposal and raised no objection. While parking concerns were raised by neighbours, the intensity of use is not considered significantly greater than what could occur under the existing lawful use. Additionally, cycle storage is proposed to encourage sustainable travel. It's important to note that 26 letters of objection were received from local residents. Concerns raised include parking pressures, noise and disruption, potential overcrowding, impact on character, safeguarding issues due to the nearby school and waste management. The issues that over planning consideration have been addressed within the report. However, it is important to mention that many of the issues raised, such as occupancy type, safeguarding of children using the local school, and the internal works already taking place, are not material planning considerations, and therefore cannot bear weight in the determination of this application. In conclusion, the proposal complies with policies SP6, CW2 and CW3, the local development plan, and is considered acceptable in planning terms. The recommendation is that planning permission be granted subject to conditions.
Okay, thank you, Josie. Right, we have two speakers on this item. The first speaker is a local resident who is speaking in objection. That's Mr. Stephen Fox. Mr. Fox, you've heard me say before, 5 minutes is what you're allowed to make a presentation, and you can start whenever you wish.
Thank you, Councillor Sorales. Good evening, everyone. Obviously, I've come here today to bring the concerns of the residents of Chapel Street, many that are present in the gallery today. The main concerns we have got is over parking and the volume of traffic within Chapel Street at this moment in time. I'd like to speak about the parking first. Obviously, Bedwellty Road, that's adjacent to Chapel Street, because they've got very little parking, 50% of their vehicles are parked in Chapel Street, and a number of those vehicles are very large vehicles. I don't know if I can present photo evidence, but you can see by the photos the size of the vehicles that are parking on our street that are not even belonging to Chapel Street. They come in from alternative streets, causing a lot of friction within the street already. Also, we heard that Casalem Chapel is no longer exists. It was converted now to a chapel of rest, a commercial business, with no parking facilities within the church grounds. So when there's a funeral taking place within the actual chapel of rest, the hearses and the family cars are parked in the centre of Chapel Street. The undertaker put cones out with no authority to do this. Also, all the people who are attending these funerals are parking within the surrounding streets. Family members, ourselves, if we know there's a funeral coming on, we are frightened to move out the street because you can't actually get back into the street when there's a funeral being taken place. I don't know how they got planning permission to run a business from this building without any parking facilities. That's another issue that we are suffering with within Chapel Street. Also, the school was mentioned. On drop-off and pick-up times, our street is full of parents' cars because they can't get parking over by the school. They park in Chapel Street. Again, taking all the parking facilities up for the residents of Chapel Street. So I really believe that it's got to be taken into consideration the pressure that Chapel Street is suffering between the Chapel of Rest and all the cars that come with that, and also with the school traffic, plus those residents at Bedwellty Road, no fault of their own because they got no parking facilities, they are parking in Chapel Street as well. So it gets to the point you're frightened to move your car because you know you're never going to get back in the street. This is the issues we are suffering with parking at the moment in Chapel Street. And concerning the volume of traffic, again, with the school, I can present photo evidence of the amount of traffic that uses Chapel Street from the school when they are dropping their children and picking their children up, to the point where family members won't even attempt to come to visit at those times because they know they won't get in the street because of the amount of traffic you use in Chapel Street. And secondly, with the volume of traffic, on the corner of Bedwellty Road, there's the main set of traffic lights where the council flats are. A lot of people, instead of going to the lights, they divert and they come across Chapel Street, creating more. There has been complaints gone in by myself and other members of the residents of the Chapel Street. Many complaints have gone in concerning it. and nothing has ever been done to help those residents. We say it's a 4-bedroom house, but there's a potential of another 6 vehicles being added to the street. And this is why I feel number 10 is not suitable to be converted into an HMO house. It's 2 double bedrooms and 2 single bedrooms. That's the possibility there could be another 6 vehicles. We could say it's very unlikely, but it's possible. And that's another 6 vehicles. It was also said in Chapel Street, you can only park on one side of the street. So we haven't got the benefits of being able to park both sides of our street because there's all part of the parkland.
You've got half a minute left.
Okay. And I know this is more of a personal thing, but this has caused a lot of anxiety within Chapel Street. On each side of this house, number 10, there's a single woman living in number 9 and a single woman with a young child living in, and they are very anxious and concerned about it. So I pray that you will take into consideration the residents of Chapel Street. I've been there 38 years, and it's breaking my heart to see what's happening.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much, Mr. Fox. And now we'll have presentation from the agent. Mr. Paul Parsons, you're online, Mr. Parsons. Can you make a presentation? You're obviously aware of the time limit as well. Can you make a start whenever you wish, okay?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Paul Parsons. I want to support the application. The planning officer has done a very good job, and there's no reason why this should cause any problem at all. There's not many. In fact, I couldn't find another HMO in the area. The fact that the parking at the school, or issues to do with the school, or issues to do with the chapel, are nothing to do with this application. The property will be managed by a not-for-profit housing association. So the whole property will be leased to a housing association who will manage the tenants. So they can pick and choose the correct tenants to go into the property. And the tenants are very unlikely to own a car. So the whole issues to do with parking should not be an issue. Obviously the highways officer says that there isn't an issue, and all the professional people have okayed it. There's no complaints from or feedback from the professional people. So there's no reason why this application shouldn't be approved.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Parsons.
If there's any questions, I can take questions.
No, we don't question the speakers,
Right, okay,
Mr. Parsons.
Right.
It's just your opportunity to make a case. You've got another minute or two left if you wish to carry on.
That's fine. That's fine. I think I said all I need to say.
Okay, thank you. Right, those are the two speakers, members. You've heard the presentation, you've heard the objections and the presentation made by the agent. Are there any comments on this application, first of all? Any questions you wish to ask? Councillor Mansell-Powell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's no question, really. It's deja vu. We're getting multiple HMO applications coming through. There were 21 questions or 21 comments from the public on page 40. Similar questions to what we get with every other planning application for an HMO. The officers have answered the 21 questions thoroughly. These are popping up all over the ward. They're in our wards. They are popping up everywhere. Unfortunately, from a planning point of view, there is very little we can do, which is highlighted within the responses from officers on page 21. I do wonder why these keep coming through to full planning when we know there's very, very little from a planning response that we can do. If you look at the responses, the only thing I would ask with the 21 responses, as the written responses would they be sent out to the 21 complaintees, or would they be passed on to the councillor for that area to pass on to the public? I think a lot of the questions here, again, answered meeting after meeting, when there's very little we can do from a planning point of view.
So the report will be available to the public once this has gone through, to answer their questions, they can read it. And
But there's no direct communication with the 21 written
no,
complaintees.
unfortunately, we won't be kind of replying to them personally about it.
But it would be okay for the local member to pass these responses on, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, our hands are tied with this one as per normal. I feel the frustration from the neighbours. We've got them in our wards.
Okay. Councillor Shane Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as Councillor Power says, it is a bit like deja vu. But the one thing that I've said every time that we've had one of these HMOs, because I am concerned about turning a 3-bedroom house into a 4-bedroom house and the number of people that could potentially be at that particular location. It is a concern, and I think some properties might be able to absorb that number of people a lot easier than other properties. And I notice this is a particular terrace house and location. Given the number that have turned into HMOs, it might not be directly linked to this, but maybe it might be able to help. Have we any feedback of those other properties that have been granted planning permission that have extended to 4 adults and potentially more than that if they have partners or whatever, how that has impacted? I know we've passed the planning application. Our hands are tied to some degree on who lives there and all the rest of it. But I just wonder how that has translated in reality, you know, after we've passed the planning thing. Because it is something that I raise each time we have these HMOs about the concern of, I know that some of the residents have raised it, of the potential for overcrowding, because I think it is not quite the same as a family of 4 if you have 4 unrelated adults and they have potential partners. And the other thing specifically related, I think, to planning matters is the parking. I know that particular area, and I understand the residents' concern. I think the applicant suggested that it's unlikely that the people living here will have cars, but it's not a certainty, and they could very well have a car. And I just wondered if we have factored in, I know we've said about bicycle storage, but if we factored in the potential impact if any of these have a car or acquire a car once they live in it. That's my two points. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, any response? I mean, generally we've had comments rather than questions here, but is there any response that the officers would like to make?
Yeah, I'll come in at this point, Chair. In terms of anecdotal sort of feedback in terms of the impact of these developments, very little, to be honest. Sorry, my glasses on. And that's either way, really. We haven't had any anecdotal sort of evidence that is acceptable. Equally so, we haven't had any anecdotal evidence that that of complaints. Well, we haven't had any complaints at all, to be honest with you. So that wouldn't be anecdotal. That would be actual evidence, really. So no is the simple answer to the question. So we don't have any feedback at all. I think I may have viewed anecdotally from a member recently on one of these applications that the one in the award was acceptable. I seem to recall that, but that very little other than that, to be honest. But the only thing I can say is we haven't received any enforcement complaints other than the one which is in Pontnafraith in Chambers House. But that has been quiet now for about, in terms of complaints, for about 12 months, perhaps even 18 months, possibly. So other than that, no, there's not a great sort of wealth of evidence really either way, to be honest. In terms of the car parking, again, you know, it's the same answer I have to give every time. We've got a 3-bedroom property here, which has turned into a 4-bedroom property. That could be achieved by putting an extension on the property, which would be acceptable in planning terms, or even by subdivision of the rooms within the house to a 4-bedroom property. And the car parking requirement for that would be 3, the same as it is for a 3-bedroom property. So from a planning perspective, there is no change in terms of the car parking requirements for this C4 HMO as it was for a C3 dwelling. So that's how we have to view the applications. I appreciate the concerns of the residents in terms of indiscriminate car parking, from whether it's from funerals or from people at the school. I mean, I have my own concerns about children not walking their kids to school. They shouldn't be driving them in the first place. But that's just me. But you know, I can understand those concerns. But we have to look at the numbers in terms of what is required for this, for the lawful use and the proposed use, and the numbers are the same. Therefore, it's difficult to justify a refusal on that basis.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we live in mining communities with long rows of terrace houses, and parking is a problem wherever you are. I live on a fairly new estate where there is parking provision, and parking is still a major issue. Even so, I mean, families with 3, 4, 5 cars, unbelievable. Still, Nigel Dix, Councillor Nigel Dix, and Councillor Foster, and then Councillor Adams, all of which you want to speak. Councillor Nigel Dix first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, as you all know, I worked for House Association for many years. I finished back in the summer. I used to work in many HMOs, managing them, working with clients who have many different challenging behaviours, or can have, substance misuse, alcohol problems. It could be all sorts of people. They all need help and support, absolutely. And I spent 15 years providing that help and support myself through the House Association I work for. They can be problematic. Neighbours don't like them. Communities don't like them. I just reading through the Welsh Government's own assessment of them, that it could be disruptive to neighbourhoods, etc., 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 all depending on how they're managed and who's occupying them. We have no control over that as a council, and yet again we handed a fait accompli because of the way the legislation is drafted. It doesn't consider about occupancy or anything else there really. It's just basically bricks and mortar planning application, and you can't have more than 10% in one area. So that'd be 10 in a street of 100 you could have in an area. So I'm not happy with HMOs. I don't think they solve any problem. The companies who buy these properties are taking away family houses, which are needed. They make vast profits. You're talking about £300 a week for each client in there, up to 300 a week. I know that because I used to work for a house association. Very profitable. Outcomes, I don't know if they're very successful or not. That varies on the client. In my experience, 10%, 20% positive outcomes, maybe. So this is something really that people need to take away their assembly member when they come knocking your door for a vote in May and asking for a relook at the legislation where we're giving council powers and more input into these HMOs that can affect our communities. So that's what I would say on that. It's a comment, but it's just my feelings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dix. Councillor Bissex-Foster, you're next.
Yeah, I think it's people know that I've spoken at a couple of planning committees prior to being a member of the planning committee about this issue. For the last HMO, which was placed in Bargoed, I had gone to the Assembly to discuss this issue and was due to meet with the appropriate people there, with Heaven David, and then unfortunately we lost him. I am still going to take up this issue because, you know, again, we just talk facts, we just talk this, but we don't consider people's lives and, you know, our neighbours who have to go through this pain and suffering and worry about the value of their homes and how their lives are going to be affected by this. And I feel very strongly about it and will continue to take this up with our new MS for the area because, you know, if we're being guided by the Welsh Government without 10% targets, then 10% might be acceptable in a city centre, but not in a small valleys town. It's just, against all, social and historical background of those places. And as Councillor Dix said, generally it's people from outside Wales who are coming in and buying up these properties and just making a quick buck on them. And I feel too that they're not solving any problems. They're creating more, again, for our residents. And what is the council here for our residents?
We're
Thank
going
you.
into very much a political situation here rather than a planning situation. I think we've got to realise what's before us and how we make a judgment on it. But those issues obviously are relevant, but for another place, I think. Councillor Mike Adams.
Thank you, Chair. As you've already mentioned yourself, a family could be taking this house of 3, 4. A couple of them could be adults with cars. Once their oldest child grows up to 17, 18, they're going to want a car. And that happens in so many places, and it's happening with myself now and Councillor Gordon. We're involved with parking issues on a terrace street where too many people have still got their kids living with them who've got their own cars. And a terrace street, if you think about it, with 3 cars owned by the family living there, can't find space to park. So having 4 people who don't know each other, possibly 4 cars or even more, but as we've been told, so many of them don't have their own transport anyway. So we like to place them in a place where there is good public transport so that they don't need one to bother all the other neighbours. The other point that Councillor Dix made was the management. Who places the new residents in these places to live together? My experience so far in Pontefraith has been they're active and involved with the property and the people that they place.
We are
often than
wandering a
not.
bit now, Councillor Adams. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're going
So
a bit too far away from the application that's in front of
No,
us.
the
I mean,
application is that we need to have a social conscience, not only for the people who already live there, but the people who, for whatever reason, haven't got a property a place of their own to live. So as long as we, as a council, are happy with the management of an HMO, I think we should have confidence in our officers who are going to be in contact with them. So I would be prepared to propose that we accept this application on the basis that we can stay in control of the people who manage these places.
I don't think that that's a situation that.
No,
we can
I
get
know
involved
that's
in.
an addition,
Sorry,
but it's something we need to be involved with.
Some input. Mr. Thomas, would you like to come in?
Yeah, obviously, through the planning process, we wouldn't have control over the management necessarily of these properties. Obviously, as a council, we do place tenants in properties like this, I guess, and through the council we would, and I guess an RSL would have the same sort of policy where they place them. But the planning process is completely separate, as you're aware.
Yeah.
I've been involved with our housing people who have contacts with the management of some of our HMOs. And I hope that continues to be a good contact.
Okay, the recommendation is that permission be granted. That's officer's recommendation. Or we've got another, Councillor Bishop-Foster, you just, was that enough?
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think what tends to happen in these situations is the residents always talk about the parking because that's a physical thing that they can see. And if they've been advised on the, you know, the main things that you can complain about, that's always one of them. It's a lot more than that, isn't it? It's about the behaviour, potential behaviour of these people, the types of people. And as Nigel said, you know, he's experienced that. He knows what type of people come into these places. And, you know, I think we just got to be aware of that and not just focus on the parking.
Well, we really in planning need just to focus on the building. And really that's the end of the story as far as the planning department is concerned, or the planning committee is concerned. All those points that you have made are very genuine and points that need to be addressed, but they not within the planning committee itself. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. It's you have to take it elsewhere, and I hope you have success in doing so, Councillor Bissett-Foster. Okay. So the recommendation is that permission be granted subject to conditions contained in the officer's report. Is somebody going to move that, or is there an alternative recommendation? Oh, Vicky, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I just wanted to double check with Councillor Bissett-Foster that she's not predetermined on this application, given her comments.
No, I've listened to everything the officers have said, and I will make my decision based on that.
Yeah, it was just that obviously you're saying that you have concerns with all HMOs, which would also impact this application. So I just wanted to double check.
That is a fact, isn't it? That's a fact of me. It's not a predetermined thing. It's just something I feel strongly about.
Okay, so if you feel that you're going into it with an open mind, then?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Vicky. So the recommendation that permission be granted, that's officer's recommendation. Is somebody going to move that?
I've effectively already moved
You've moved it. Okay, is it seconded anywhere? Yeah, as I say, we've got very little control over all the other issues that have been brought up, as much sympathy as we have with them. But unfortunately, it's not in the purview of a planning committee to decide on those things. So it's been moved and is seconded. Did somebody second it? If not, I'll second it. And can we have the vote up on the voting slip, please? Okay.
Yes, Chair, the votes have been cast and the officer's recommendation has been carried.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicky. And now, finally, we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is, would you like to leave? Yeah, okay, Mr. Fox. Agenda item 5, which is application number 25/0639 NCC. It's land within the curtilage of Frontier Multigate Limited, which is along Newport Road, Pontefraith, and the case officer is Helen Winsell. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, sorry, I'll just make the presentation. So, this application, it says here it's within the curtilage of Frontier Multigate on Newbridge Road Industrial Estate, Pontefraith. It was formerly part of the curtilage of that property, just to clarify. It has now been in separate ownership and is now a separate plot to that building, which is next door. So the application that we have before us, members may recall that last year there was an application that came before this committee which was approved on the site for employment units. Unfortunately, those works became quite advanced on the site, the implementation of that, but with no conditions actually discharged on the planning permission that was granted. So due to that, we have had to request that an application comes in to rectify that situation with those conditions being addressed effectively as part of this application. So this is an aerial photograph of the site. It's a little bit out of date because the building on there, which you can see being built within the photograph, is now substantively complete. There's a block plan which also shows the landscaping arrangement on the site. So the building, it has actually been, as I say, it's substantively complete, as was granted consent previously. What has changed, though, is there's been an alteration to the parking and to the HGV parking, proposed turning sort of areas involved with that as well, and also the landscaping arrangements as part of that development. There's the plans and elevations there, which again have been constructed as previously approved. And we've got some photographs here of the outside of the building, so you can see from that it's essentially substantively complete. And again, these photographs here sort of show the area that's to the south of the building. You can see the area there that's covered over in grass. That will have some further landscaping and some further tree planting and other planting under this proposal. So just to talk about the merits of this proposal very quickly, there has been a substantial amount of information that had been submitted under this new application to deal with the issues that were raised by the conditions on the original planning permission. This includes information in relation to the access, cycle parking, noise and considerations, a travel plan, also contaminated land considerations and landscaping. The information that we've had is considered to be acceptable to either remove conditions that are no longer considered relevant, or to vary the conditions that have been added so that they become compliance conditions only. Just an update on the application. There were, if you recall from seeing the report, a couple of conditions there in relation to the submission of our arboricultural method statement, and also some additional landscaping details, which suggested that further information would be required before those details were actually implemented. Just to advise members that further information has been submitted and has been considered. And as a result of that, I request delegated authority from the committee to alter conditions 3 and 7 that are in that report, so that they become compliance conditions with the information that has been submitted in respect of those conditions. So in conclusion, well, perhaps it's a little bit unfortunate that we've got to the situation where we've had this building sort of get so far without these conditions being discharged. It is considered that the information to deal with the outstanding issues submitted is acceptable, and as a result of that, approval is recommended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Are there any questions, members? No? Then the officer's recommendations are that permission be granted subject to the conditions contained in the officer's report. Will somebody move that?
Sorry, Chair, that's with amendments to the conditions as well, as just described.
Okay, thank you for that, Helen. Thanks for the reminder, subject to the change as well. Okay, Councillor Adams.
I was only going to say I was surprised this one had come up for tonight, because as far as I was concerned, every time I go up past it to Sainsbury's, it seemed completely built.
Yes.
So I didn't realise that we had all these other issues coming up that were stopping it being full and employing 100 people and earning lots of money for the authority. So, but yes.
Okay, so you're moving the recommendations.
Well, I think it had already been moved, and I was what I would go into.
Okay, then it's been moved and seconded, and so can we put it to the vote, please? There you are, the voting slip is there. Submit your vote, and we'll wait for Vicky to confirm the outcome.
Yes, Chair, that's been unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you for that, Vicky. And that concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you everyone for your attendance. I wish you all a good evening.
Thanks, Chair.
A safe journey home.